Muted.
Hi, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for this webinar today with Cecito and Heinz Marketing. My name is Jing So, and I am a content marketing manager at Cecito. And here I'm really excited to have with me today Robert Pease, who's going to be speaking with us today. Robert is the practice lead for pipeline performance at Heinz Marketing. Heinz Marketing is a B2B specific marketing agency based in Seattle, Washington. Basically what he does is he helps clients from lots of different company sizes, help them build a strong demand generation function in their marketing organization. And he has lots and lots of experience with, building marketing teams and marketing processes, in startups and different size companies in his career. And the other cool thing is Robert, I know him personally as well. He has been, working with Cecito here to help us with our go-to-market and help us build, better processes here internally. So really excited to have him talk with us today. And just a couple of housekeeping items. Please, hopefully, let me know if you have any trouble with audio. Hopefully, you guys can hear us well. Let us know if that's not the case. And let's just keep this whole thing conversational. So if you have any questions, just please put them into the chat box. We can answer them as it comes as your questions come up. And also, we can certainly will dedicate some time at the end to answer additional questions. Okay, Robert, are you on the line?
I am. Thank you, JC, for that very wonderful and kind introduction. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here today. As JC said, my goal here over the next hour or so is to sort of impart, I guess, some points of view and things that you can do and kind of make good action out of it as you sort of finish off 16 and I think more importantly here look to 2017 around demand generation. We are, as with most, or often with technologies and systems, sometimes the gremlins show up. So hope everyone can hear us and see the visuals. So we're going to begin to jump through this a little bit. Again, as JC had said, I've kind of got a unique position here with the team at Cecito. I think I think the space they're in, the product is phenomenal. I've got a personal sort of point of view because I work with this team. So I'll do my best not to be completely biased, but I can't make any promises. So what we're going to do agenda-wise is we're going to talk about 4 key things today, or kind of focus on 4 key areas. I think that the first piece to me is always about kind of messaging and our point of view and how we're sort of speaking to our market. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that because I think it's a good level set. Then I'm going to get into what I'm going to call the 8 demand generation plan essentials, right? These are things that should and will inform demand generation planning. And then kind of a quick checklist type view of what, as JC had mentioned, my role and what I do on my consulting work is around pipeline performance. And that's just literally sort of looking at full funnel dynamics and metrics, right? Everything from top of funnel awareness to middle of funnel nurturing to closing and retention. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then, of course, want questions as we go through this. I've asked JC to interrupt me as your questions come in. So I definitely want to make it as interactive as we can in this format. Since this is sort of the next slide here sort of talks about a New Year's resolution. As I put this together, I was like, maybe this isn't totally a resolution. Maybe it's more of sort of of an operating tenet. But I think as marketers, especially as B2B marketers, we need to think about ourselves as being a sales team with a budget. Revenue discipline is critical. Shared revenue perspective is critical. There's a natural handoff that we'll get into that exists between sales and marketing. But if you do one thing, this is the one thing I ask, right? Think of yourself in this way as a marketer, right? And think of yourself as a salesperson. You just happen to have some resources and budget that you can do to help yourself sell. On the point on messaging, so this is a Matt Heinz, who is the president of Heinz Marketing, his sort of favorite slide about this, and this is all about how you talk to your market, right? How you talk to your prospects, how you talk to your buyer personas, and it's all about selling the hole, not the drill, right? The customer wants a hole. The fact that your drill is this awesome titanium, whatever reinforced drill bit, important, but the real goal here, the outcome that's being sought, is to actually get a hole drilled, right? So think about that also in terms of discipline, and it becomes very easy to think about your features and your functions and your product, and you get an opportunity to talk to a prospect and you just want to talk about all that. The framing of the conversation around the needs that a prospect has and the outcome that they're seeking will do wonders to elevate the conversation. You get on the same side of the table with the prospect to solve the problem. So consider that as you go forward. Just as a final slide on messaging, and that it matters here. So, the notion that it's not about you, this is a thematic part of this, right, is that yes, there'll be a point in time to talk all about you and what you do, but focus your message and focus your outreach in and around, your customer, right? There'll be a time and a place for a demo. It's a hard thing to close to when you've just started the conversation. So keep that in mind as you go forward, and think about that in terms of your offers and your campaigns, and as you look to expand into your market. The next slide here talks about sales stages, right? It begins, there's one of two slides on sales stages. So, there's a lot of art and science and all sorts of things around funnels and sales pipelines, whatever. But I think that the step back on this is there's only two stages that matter. One is believe, right? I need to do something. I'm sort of committed to making a change, or committed to making taking an action to do something. So I'm leaning forward to solve my problem, or to achieve the outcome I'm seeking. And then the next slide here is the sort of the next step down of that, which is now they believe in you and I, right? So I have a problem I want to solve, and I want to solve that problem with you. And again, this is back to kind of having a little bit of more patience in the sales cycle, and a patience in campaigns, which is, look, you can't always quickly convince people that you're the best solution if they don't know that they have a problem they need to solve. So think about that as you go to market, and as you sort of roll out campaigns and messaging, and think about your sales team in the same way. So again, crash course in messaging. I do this pretty much everywhere I go as a consultant. I always I like to step back and think about it in this regard, because often it's difficult when you're sort of in the weeds on a daily basis to sort of think about this from the perspective of your prospect. The next slide here will kick us into what I'm going to call the 8 demand generation plan essentials. There'll be a theme of today's presentation. Everything's sort of numbered. The first one here is what I have sort of done for years as sort of a VP of marketing, a CMO. I did that before I got into consulting, and I didn't really know what to call this. The image is sort of this iterative campaign framework, but it's about sort of, it's test, measurement, right, and evaluation, and doing that in a rapid form. And the world is changing, consumption patterns are changing, consumer and business behaviors are changing. You've got to think about what you can do in terms of new ways to reach your prospects, new tools you can use. I mean, if you think about what Cicito does, it's going after prospects in a way that's based on what they're actually sharing online, right? And we'll get more into that a little bit. And so that's not about just sort of buying a list and sending an email. It's about contextual engagement. Will it work for you? The best way to know is to test. I advocate that every company needs to have a sort of a testing budget, whether that's $400 or $4,000, just to sort of get you into this method, right? So your goal is to build a customer acquisition machine. You have to understand who you're trying to reach. You have to understand how they are buying. If you're a new company or you're getting into a new market, there's generally more unknown variables than there are knowns. And this process and this sort of iterative and agile mindset will be helpful, right? And there's a little bit of writing around agile marketing and some of the other things that are out there. We've done some stuff on the Heinz marketing blog, but again, this is just sort of a way to think about it, right? So get dialed in terms of what you're going to do in the next year, but also build some flexibility here to move faster, I guess would be my guidance on that. Number 2 here is around content marketing. And so what I've tried to do is I've worked through these slides to kind of give a third-party data point in here. And this is not a new data point in terms of where decision-making happens and people are making decisions before they talk to a salesperson, so on and so forth. I think content and content marketing has to be viewed in proper context, right? it definitely is the lifeblood of the modern sales cycle. People want to educate themselves and consume before they talk to you, right? The odds of you actually talking to one of your target prospects with them having absolutely no knowledge of the alternatives that are out there, ways to attack the problem is pretty limited. I mean, even if you're lucky enough to get somebody on the phone, all they got to do is drop your name into a Google search, right? So what happens when that happens? Like, what are the search results that come up? It's good discipline to go through, right? I like to think about content and content marketing as it relates to the funnel and mapping it to stages, right? There's certain consumption that's going to happen at the outer edge where you're trying to build awareness and reach people for the first time. It's thought leadership point of view. There's stuff that's very critical for the middle of the funnel, which is I'm trying to bring people through the buying cycle. And then there's also stuff that is more sort of for direct sales engagement. And I think that's how you have to look broadly at content. And again, this notion of consumption. Like, think about where people read and what they do. I'm convinced that every target market, target person out there has at least one email they open and read every day. How do you get in that, right? Do you get in that with paid insertion ads? Do you get in that with best practice content? I mean, those are the types of things, but I think that's a good way to think about content and content marketing. The next step here, or the next piece, number 3, is around database health. Having a ton of contact records that you bought or downloaded or whatever it may be is not always the best thing. I see this often where you go in and there's a large sort of prospect database to work from, but it's not dialed into the target persona, right? So then you want to do some campaigns and you want to do some outreach, and then what you do is you drive people into your sales funnel that aren't qualified because your database wasn't built with qualification criteria in mind. I'm a big believer in sort of programmatic engagement. I think you have to look at this as a core metric, which is what is the overall sort of size of your prospect database. What is the overall percentage of that have shown some level of engagement? They've opened something, they've clicked something, they've visited the website, because those are all leading indicators of funnel performance.
Robert, I think that's a really great point, right? You can't, more is not always better. It's like, are you focused on your target audience here, right? So here at Placido, and Robert kind of stepped in at this point too, when we were thinking about, like, do we really have the right set of metrics to really understand whether we're effective at each stage of the funnel, right? Something we track here is actually database health and database growth, right? So how many contacts do we have? What percentage of contacts have actually engaged with us in the past, let's say 30 days? Is that percentage dropping? Is that percentage growing week over week, month over month? Because our goal, right, is to make sure that we have not just a database of qualified people, but people who are consistently interacting with us, and making sure we can do that, and thinking about whether our campaigns are doing that is something we focus on.
Yeah, great point, right? And I guess that reinforces that I practice what I preach. So thank you for highlighting that. Again, I look at these as sort of leading indicators, right? And a lot of times what will happen is if you in the month or in the quarter or even the year, right? And you look at how do we do? Okay, well, here's the revenue and here's the churn and here's whatever it may be. Those are very reactive positions to be in. We'll get a little bit more around reporting here soon. But again, figure out where you can be proactive and do it, and get ahead of things. And a final point on this slide, and this is there certainly is a lot of both art and science around landing pages and conversion rate optimization. But don't let your database fields drive your landing page design. In this day and age, there are a lot of services and systems that'll do back-end data enhancement. So capture an email address, get a phone number, right? All the different qualification criteria you're looking for. Think about those and ask yourself if do you really need to push those for the person to fill out, or can you do that on the back end? Because again, you're trying to remove friction in the process. If you're fortunate enough to get someone to grab a piece of content and land on a landing page, you don't want to miss your shot, right? You don't want to miss your chance to convert that person, because even if you just get an email address, right, you have a way to reach that person directly, an unknown person becomes a known person. I think that's an important goal to have. The next slide here talks about something that is phenomenally awesome, right? Process. JC and I were talking about this ahead of it and talking about it. And I guess my message here is you need a process mindset. And what process does, right? And this is what I would recommend. You think about how you interact with prospects. You think about how your content is produced and distributed. You think about your reporting and your measurements. And then you have a step back, which is oversight, management, a critical eye on what's working, what's not, how it's performing. Often this sort of self-examination is difficult, right? Because it's like, wow, I thought that program or I thought that campaign would work much better, and now I have to say it didn't. But if you take this sort of iterative process and you sort of know that you're going to be constantly moving and trying new things, not everything is going to work swimmingly, right? But you haven't bet everything on one thing, right? You're doing a lot of things in very rapid fashion. So again, I'm happy if you all want to get my follow up with me afterwards. We can dig into these in a little more detail. But I think the takeaway from here is just look, think about how you acquire customers across process. Don't think about it as, oh, it's marketing and they do this and sales does this. I mean, what are the things that happen across all those things? Back to the previous slide, or around database health. We don't want to drive a bunch of unqualified leads into the funnel. Right? All of a sudden our metrics look great. Hey, look at all the leads we did. Look at how many leads we passed to sales. Sales then says, well, that's great, but none of these are closable. None of these believe in you and I, right? To take it back to the previous slide. So just think about that, right? And again, I'm happy to dig into this in more detail. I didn't want to make this totally about process. I just wanted everyone to sort of grasp the fact that if you just take these 4 things and think about how they work in your organization, or if they do, get on a whiteboard with your VP of sales, right? Or get your VP of marketing and your VP of sales in the same room and talk about these 4 things. I think it'll be. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to jump in here and share kind of like 2 metrics that we look at both from the marketing side and the sales side at Sofido that I think are really, really helpful for keeping the marketing team accountable to outcomes instead of activities, right? So the first metric I would say is conversion rate, right? So we really keep a close eye on like how are people, how are people moving through our marketing funnel, right? We kind of oftentimes see, oh yes, we have all this new content, we're driving people to it, right? We're capturing new leads, but oftentimes it's where once we pass them to the sales team, we think they're qualified, but they're actually, not converting to they're not able to make contact with them, or they are, but then they're just qualified, right? So we're really looking at like even when we pass leads off to the sales team, how are conversion rates, right, in the sales pipeline? So I think that's pretty key to then helping us understand, okay, like are these leads from these sources even ready to be passed up to sales? And the other metric that's really complementary is velocity of the leads, how quickly they're able to move to the next stage, right? Same thing, we're finding, for example, leads from certain sources, just people are interested in our content and our ideas, but not ready to buy, not ready to sign up for a demo yet. So we want to then kind of rejigger or rethink how what is our qualified lead definition and what we can do to move leads through the funnel faster.
Yeah, great points, right? And again, that maps back to, they believe, right? Okay, I do want to, use, behavioral data, right? Behavioral triggers. I do believe that, social is a channel to reach my target customers is something I need to do. Let me educate myself about that, right? And then, we do our jobs correctly, then now that they're believing they need to do that, then they believe that they need to do that and they need to do it with Sofido, right? Again, this is the part of the presentation where I sort of oscillate back and forth from sort of the structural planning piece to kind of having the operational perspective, the same one that JC does. So I'll try to turn my hats backwards and forward as I do this. The next slide here is around people and the the link or the image here is, I thought this was a really clever piece of content marketing that HubSpot did. They certainly have done a lot of really clever things in the world, but they basically rolled up a bunch of businesses in terms of how they staff, right? The org charts of different types of businesses and different types of go-to-market things. And one, I thought it was again clever and an interesting thing because it's a question on the mind of marketers. So you can apply this to the content marketing bucket, but it reinforces the differences in structure of teams and skills based on the type of business. I think that one, the bullet point says here, right? You have to surround yourself with people who have the right attitude, aptitude, and intelligence, which is curiosity. And I mean, B2B marketing, B2B sales is changing. It's being technically enabled. We're in a world where it's not so much just B2B versus B2C anymore. There's sort of this middle ground of B2P, right? Business to professional. So you're selling to an individual or you're trying to reach an individual. So all of those things sort of lead to the point here, which is that you need to build your team around how you acquire customers. And I'll just use two sort of broad examples, right? One is, look, if you have 12-month sales cycles and you sell big enterprise deals and they take a lot of time and a lot of people, then you need to optimize for that type of buying, right? You need to, if the demo is the thing, if the on-site pilot is the thing, then the whole organization needs to be structured and optimized around that. If you're an online load and no touch customer acquisition machine where people hit your site, sign up for the product, pay with a credit card type thing, then you need to optimize for that. It's not that you don't need to think about pay-per-click advertising, let's say, in the enterprise scenario, but you don't need to be, that's not the dominant skill set that needs to be in place, right? It's a much more of a sales enablement skill set as opposed to a high volume, high transaction. So think about that, right? I think that there's lots of different ways to build an organization, right, and to build a team. But I always think about it as that. I start with how we're building the business, and then in some cases, I'll go back to Cecito even as an example here, where there is a way to go to the site, sign up for a trial, right? You can see how the product works. You get very awesome sort of white glove enablement to sort of take you through the process to unlock the value. And there's a structure around that. Well, there's also, as we deal with some larger enterprise customers, or Cecito deals with some larger enterprise customers, that whole process, right, which is generally doesn't start with someone hitting the website and doing a trial. It's a little different flow, and so even there we've sort of structured and prioritized to support two separate, right, kind of paths of customer acquisition. So just think about that as you go forward. And again, this goes back to kind of the I guess reinforcing point here, right? Don't compromise. Don't be afraid to take chances. Sometimes people with high potential and very little sort of relevant experience can really turbocharge things because, again, things are moving and changing so fast that it may be a good mix to add to the team. The sixth point here, and I continue to talk about sales enablement and reference that again. This goes back to the point on, look, you're marketing, you're basically a sales team with a budget. So anything that you can do, right, to accelerate, optimize, and expand this process is essential. Right? And you've got to have that mindset. Again, there's a marketing Sherpa quote off to the side here, but this is around qualification, right? And there is always friction where marketing and sales meet, right? We've now got enough discipline that we use things like a marketing qualified lead as a label. We use things like a sales accepted lead as a label, sales qualified lead as a label, or you should be. If you're not, you need to think about that discipline because at least you can call it what it is. But core to this is this notion of kind of common ground, right? Which is unite behind how people are buying, but view your success through sales pipeline. The first thing is if you close a new deal tomorrow, your first question as a marketer should be, where did it come from? How long did it take? How much did it cost? And if it didn't cost more than we got for it over the long term, how can I go get more? And your head of sales, your sales leadership may own the pipeline and forecast, but get dialed in on it and be very aware of it, because that's another sort of, again, that's sort of a lagging indicator, but that's the result set of what you've been working hard to do. So don't be afraid to go there.
I think this is a great point, Robert. You know, just like I said earlier too, right? Just having this view of the sales pipeline has been kind of it has really changed how the marketing team operate here, right? I think so from my perspective, right, like as a content marketing person, I'm thinking about content distribution, right? There are so many options, you know, for us to, you know, spend money, right? Like we can do content syndication programs and pay these third parties to put our content right in front of their audience, right? And these are really good strategies, right, for getting more brand awareness, attracting our target audience, right? But, you know, we also need to look at, well, okay, once we do get these leads, right, what's the conversion rate as they're moving through the sales funnel? What's the velocity? Are they actually, is our sales team able to close any of these leads? Because at the end of the day, right, if we're going to invest in these programs, we've got to make sure that there is a positive ROI. And, you know, we've been testing these programs for the last few months, right? But it's kind of interesting because when we look at the data, it's no longer like, oh, great, we got all these leads. It's like, oh, okay, let's see how we can get more of them to, you know, let's see how we can better nurture them and get more of them, help our sales team close them.
Yeah, for sure, right? Again, another great point, JC. You know, we have taken, again, practicing what we preach here, you know, unifying around opportunities, right? And that becomes a core metric of what we look at. And again, we're never going to have enough, right? So you can't be satisfied. Have a plan, have a target. Look at how you're doing, you know, month to month, week to week, whatever the best sort of time interval is for your business. But again, you unite behind that, right? And then just sort of do everything you can to constantly tweak it. I'm not sure it's a destination, right? I think this whole thing is kind of a journey, and you just got to sort of you know, constantly be you know, curious, right, and poke and prod and ask questions around it. And again, that requires a broader sort of, you know, organizational mindset around it as well. The next slide here is intentional around technology. This is a great infographic that Scott Brinker puts together. Chiefmartech.com is his site. This is nuts. There is no shortage of stuff out there that is available to do all sorts of interesting things. I love technology. I ran a software company, a marketing technology software company. I believe technology is an enabler. So, you know, what often happens when an infographic like this gets out is that, you know, most marketers are like overwhelmed, right? They just don't know what to do and where to start. And so, you know, this one's beefy enough. It gets two slides for number 7, right? So now we're sort of doing some of the voiceover. Yeah, but think about technology as an enabler. Start with your process. And what you're trying to accomplish before you call a vendor, right? I'll go back to taking Cecito as an example, which is, hey, look, if you're looking to increase leads, if you want to do more efficient, cost-effective demand generation, you should be looking at all different channels and all different ways to do that. I absolutely believe that social needs to be one of those channels. It is a place of a different sort of dynamic in terms of how identification, interaction, conversion happens, and so you need to have you know, some baked-in knowledge into a product platform to help you do that, right? You can't figure out everything. And again, I'll use Cecito as the example, right? You can drop in and you sign up for a trial. It's on the website. It's way easy, right? So do that, and you'll see whether or not this applies or is relevant to you. And then you're like, okay, great. So now I'm seeing what I'm trying to accomplish, which is I want, you know, better, more qualified leads, and I want to use criteria like, I mean, you know, it was just so, you know, we're all sort of in the broader sort of sales marketing space, right? Dreamforce just happened, huge Salesforce.com event, gets bigger every year. I'm not sure who's going to play next year. I don't know where you can go beyond U2, but the point is that this is a massive event, and there is unlimited chatter about it, getting into, no pun on chatter, right? That was one of their products there. But the point is, there was a bunch of people talking about Dreamforce ahead of Dreamforce, right? They're hashtagging a DF, whatever it is. Like, those are people generating signals, right? Signals they're going to attend the event. So look, if you're spending all the money to have an exhibit there, have a booth there, and are so caught up in the logistics of it, and then haven't really done anything to promote your presence in context to those who are telling you that they're going to be there, I think you're missing out. And so all of that is not about Socedo and how the software works. That's about the consciousness to know, man, anytime we're going to do an event, what we need to do is make this part of the playbook. And the playbook is we find, people online that are talking about this, and we begin to engage with them. And there's all sorts of gestures you can do, right? You can just basically do a soft touch in terms of a follow. You can do a message. So, again, we can get way into the details. That's not the purpose of this. But the point is, like, a modern CMO is going to be technically savvy, right? You have to be of technology. You don't necessarily have to be in technology or write SQL queries or whatever it is, but you have to know what it can do for you. Focus on process, right? Back to our sort of 4 key processes that we talked about, and then where technology can enable those, and then you're going to have your own sort of marketing stack, right? And we've got tons and tons of insight and data on this at Heinz. So if you're interested in that as a concept, let me know, and I'll have to point you to some pieces on that. Number 8 here, so our 8th essential piece, 8th and final for this part of the presentation, is around what I'm just kind of dropping all this in the same kind of category of content, social, and search. And this is, again, all about be found where your prospects are spending their time, getting their flow of consumption. Think about that in terms of consumption. I mean, what JC does at Socedo, is sort of leads the content marketing efforts. And so, okay, well, we really want to reach, B2B marketers, generally who are using some type of marketing automation. So there's a consciousness and an awareness that lead nurturing and lead management is something that needs to be a process that they've enabled with technology. And then where are we then telling them that what they really would benefit from is enhancing that whole process with behavioral data, stuff that we can sort of bring together and give them the ability to sort of enhance that overall process with. The sort of publish and pray thing, I'm a big believer in. JC now knows this up close, right? Is it great? Hey, we got an article in Fortune magazine, yay! Go to Google Analytics, right? See how much traffic it drives. See how long they stay on your site. See how many pages deep they are. See what the bounce rate is. Your goal here is to generate qualified and engaged traffic based on where your prospects are and how they're consuming content. Pay-per-click search or pay-per-click advertising can certainly work based on back to your business model and what you do. But if you're spending a bunch of money and you're getting a bunch of clicks and you've got a 98% bounce rate, you need to you think about who you're attracting, so that's targeting. You think about the offer you're giving, which is sort of the landing page. So anyway, you can dial this in a lot of different ways, but go there, right? Google Analytics is really a wonderful thing to sort of take a look at, and then what you may end up seeing is that, wow, that article that was written 2 years ago, we've got this massive long tail of traffic that comes from it, right? And it stays and it engages and it converts. And so all of that is, and again, this is could probably even be rewritten a little bit around the notion of kind of account-based marketing at this stage. It certainly is a very topical thing, but the third bullet here around surrounding your target customer, right? Reviews, influencers, thought leadership is, think about the universe of people who need to become your customers, name the target accounts. Think about how you're going to reach them, right? They may not believe yet, right? How do we get them to believe? And once we get them to believe, how do we get them to believe in us? And so that is where you have to spend time, effort, and energy. There's a constant discussion around, what is the ROI of this stuff, right? I'm great. I got blog posts, and I'm on social, and I'm getting shares, and I'm getting these social gestures and these social actions that are happening. When is it actually going to work? And again, I believe it's a critical piece to any funnel and any plan is to have this. You have to sort of see it for what it is. You measure its effectiveness, as I said, which is, go and just look at how good a job you're doing at actually reaching your target prospects where they're spending their time. And there's ways that you can track that now by just understanding if the content that you're putting out there, the social engagement that you're doing, is actually working, in the right way. So that takes us through kind of the top 8 pieces. The next couple slides here kind of drill down on in a little more detail. And again, these are sort of extracted kind of out of the Cecedo context, but I thought they were good to sort of go back and sort of roll up a lot of the, okay, what's possible here? So we've talked about process, we've talked about iterative frameworks, we've talked about measurement, we've talked about the role of technology. So this is a snapshot of Cecedo's CEO Asim's profile. And what's highlighted here, again, are just contextual elements that are very interesting and in some ways extremely unique to this particular platform. So whether it's Twitter or it's LinkedIn or it's something else that evolves and becomes the place where people are, you've got someone projecting, right? So this had to be set up by this person, right? This is his version of him. His job title, his interest, there's a location, the community, the people that, the things and brands or products or services or interests that this person pays attention to. There's a phenomenal thing that happens in the social landscape, which is you have these sort of self-identified and self-grouping segments, right? If you think about the number of people and the types and the roles and how it sort of throws traditional demographics and list selects off, if you think about all the people that follow a brand like Patagonia, let's say, right, you're certainly going to have people that actually are rugged and climbing mountains, but you're also going to have people that just like their clothing because it feels good, or they like to run in it, or whatever it may be. So there's really cool elements around this that you can extract. And the right side of this highlight thing talks about sort of the events, right? Real-time events, conversations, pain points. Like context and timing are so critical, and I didn't lay this in terms of a data point, but the longer the time is between a lead coming into your pipeline and your follow-up on that, it just degrades, right? And there's so many easy things to do these days in terms of someone comes in, they fill out a form, they download a white paper. You can optimize the response time and personalize that response time that actually helps the sales team as much as it does the prospect experience. And again, in this case, this is sort of a good illustration back again around sort of the event thing, right? Okay, people are talking about Dreamforce. Okay, what can I do with that? Well, maybe you don't want everybody. Maybe you want certain locations. Maybe you want certain job titles. Maybe you want certain sort of affinities or whatever it may be. This is all sort of, you're able to sort of slice and dice this stuff by harvesting this data out of there, which I think is incredibly powerful. And then the next slide here kind of talks about, again, this is sort of out of the Cecedo context, but even as I got to know the company long before helping them and working with them, I just liked the fact that the product bakes in how to do this. You'll find that in a lot of cases where the technology, although an enabler, especially stuff that's sort of newer or more innovative, how to do it and how to use it is actually baked into the experience. And so, like in this case, right, this is like, look, this is how you analyze this data set, right, this population, this audience. You look by identification elements like a Twitter handle. You look for keywords, in this case, industry keywords. And then you look for other elements, right? You look for things like the event hashtag. So all of those things kind of taken together. So that's how you do it. And so you learn and you build your skill set as you go through these processes. I mean, I'm a serial trial guy, right? I like to see how products work. I like to stay tuned in and brushed up on what's new and exciting. Sometimes I don't get stuff that I read about, and I do this for a living. So I think the best way to do it is actually drop in and experience it. And so again, again, using Cecedo as a case study here, which is, okay, great, this is an innovative area doing some interesting things. It's relevant to what every company needs to do, which is demand generation. Okay, great. So let's make sure we make people able to experience that. So there's a trial. Right? Again, you can go and you can experience this in very rapid fashion. You light up your experience relevant to your business, and you can judge, right, if this is good for you or not good for you. So no shortage of stuff. So go back to the sort of the marketing technology landscape slide. Right, a lot of stuff on there. Most of that stuff has the ability to do a trial. So just be curious and definitely experiment. This will wrap the 8 demand generation plan essentials section of the presentation here. And the next slide So again, I think that whether you're in the day-to-day activities that you're doing, right, apply this stuff. If you're doing a post-mortem on 16, how did you do along the lines of this stuff? If you're looking forward to 17 and what you need to invest in and building your budget, just sort of apply this as a framework, right? And it's like, okay, am I covered in all these areas, right? Do I have my experimentation budget, right? Is it worth again, think about social as a channel of customer acquisition, right? Think about the data that can be harvested from there and be put to use to enhance existing lead records. I mean, there's this, marketing automation systems are really good at tracking email activity and website activity and content downloads and stuff that you can kind of control and track. But there's all this other stuff that's happening out there, right? How do I know that my prospect is in my database who has a very high lead score is going to Dreamforce? Right, you're only going to know that if you've connected the dots between all of that data that you have inside your sort of four walls with what that person's actually talking about out there, right? And a tweet that has a hashtag associated with it is that triggering event that then makes it easier to sort of set yourself up for success, especially again if you go back to spend the money to have a booth at Dreamforce. So just some additional editorial points on that. The next slide here. Again, I want to kind of look forward, right, to build a better plan for 2017. Kind of in my theme of numbers here, 4 key things, right? One is sort of do the math. And as JC had said, they were doing an awesome job of this before I got involved. It's certainly been a focus area, which is, look, it's a funnel, right? View the world through a funnel. You've got, certain sort of, known and targeted accounts out there, right? How many of those are engaged? How many of those are moving their way through the funnel? How many of those convert to interest? How many of those convert to trial? How many of those convert to opportunity? How many of those then convert to deal? And so look at it in terms of relative percentages in those stages, but also look at it over time. I think it's hugely insightful to see what you're doing up, and it's so easy to get caught up on the day-to-day and be like, look, last month we did this, and this month we're tracking to that, or we're not tracking to that. We may be above it, we may be below it. And then it generates questions like why, right? Sometimes stuff happens and you're hugely successful and you don't know why. Sometimes the thing that you thought through and you thought was going to work swimmingly just doesn't. And but again, sort of a quantitative view will certainly help that. This is sort of the nodding head number, right? The create a clear customer profile. Easy to say, not always easy to do, especially new markets, new companies, shifting buying preferences, committee-based buying. I mean, you put a picture and a name next to somebody and put it up on the wall, right? And what are their motivations, right? How are they compensated? How are they measured from a performance review standpoint? I mean, these are all the things that you have to factor into where your product or service fits with the person that you're trying to sell to, right? Again, it's not about you; it's about that person. So that's my guidance, as it will, on customer profiles. This is a reinforcing point, right? Map the sales and buying process, and yeah, fire lots of bullets, right? This is just the experimentation mindset, the iterative mindset, the agile mindset. Don't go all in. Don't buy the big package out of the gate, right? Have a mindset where you're like, okay, how can we sort of take a digestible piece of this? And it's like, great, you can do a 10-page or a 10-session white paper sponsorship. Well, can we do one to see how it works? And works is relative. What's our conversion? What's our engagement? What's our time on site? All those different things that we've talked about. So these are sort of, again, kind of a step back to say for 17, if you're not already doing this, make sure this is what you're thinking about as you finish out the fourth quarter of this year and as we begin to look to next year.
And I think another point I want to add here is it's good to have like an annual plan, right? But it's also, I think, to hold ourselves accountable and to, especially, for our company, we're growing pretty quickly. Revenue goal is increasing pretty rapidly month over month, right? We also think about like a monthly plan, right? So we're actually, the marketing team, we're sitting down with sales. We know what the revenue target is for the next couple of months, what pipeline they want to have, how many opportunities sales would like to have, right? So from there, we're able to work backwards and come up with, okay, then based on our lead sources, what can we do? like based on our historical conversion rate, how many leads, marketing qualified leads can we expect to get, and where can we kind of dial things in a little bit more. So I think it's easy to kind of build a plan, right? But at the same time, make sure you make time, I would say on a monthly or quarterly basis, to kind of say how did things go, right? What can we tweak?
Yeah, great points, JC. And as you're going through that, I think about our meetings and how we do these, and we have Jack is the head of sales, right? Attends those meetings, and he probably gets tired of me asking him this, but I'm always like, how are you feeling about the month ahead, right? How are you feeling about the quarter ahead? And I realize that's a softer question to ask, but we got a lot of data, we got a lot of conversion, we got a lot of things, right? But your sales lead, your sales VP will have a pretty good feel for how the forecast is coming together, and just make that a checkoff question, right? That you ask in any point in time. And again, this is just about unifying behind a purpose, right? We are the marketing team. That's great. We are a sales team with a budget, and it is about how can we deploy that to achieve the objective, which is, as JC said, right, the monthly plan, or the quarterly plan. So the next chunk of the presentation here is, again, thematic around a number. I want to cover 10 specific things, and this is through the lens of pipeline performance, and I haven't gotten a ton into that in terms of what I do at Heinz Marketing. This is sort of the best, I guess, sort of summary of that in terms of core areas that I will spend my time in, and I believe companies that think about themselves as high-performance companies or aspire to be, right? They need to look at their sales and marketing pipelines in this way. So that's where I'm going to kick off, and it's very visual. So I appreciate everybody staying with us here as we've gone through this. Hopefully, it's some good information. So the first one, and we've covered a lot of this so far, right? So the first one is around understanding your target customer, right? Customer profile, customer persona, what makes a person tick, right? It's not about you, it's about them. And how do you best, address the needs they have and the outcome they're seeking, right? So, yes, marketing 101, but this often fails in implementation. So keep in mind that as a guiding principle. Know what a qualified lead looks like. Yes, right. Not everybody has this shared definition. You can do everything from just sort of have a very constant and collaborative interface between sales and marketing. The marketing lead and the sales lead need to meet every week, and they need to talk about this, all the way to let's actually write it all down and get everybody to sign it. It doesn't have to be as rigid as a contract, right? But it's sort of the service level agreement. I'm a huge fan of stating out loud what a qualified lead is in meetings, right? I mean, because the more you say it, the more people hear it, right? It just becomes part of the DNA of the company, and it allows you to challenge it where you need to be, right? Don't just talk about MQLs, right? Be like, okay, what are we calling a qualified lead, right? What is our threshold around this? What is our lead score that makes something qualified or not? Are we driving the right information into the process, right, to make the determination? So, hammer this, right, is your job as, back to marketing as sales with a budget, right? You can't close something that's not qualified. So have the discipline on the front edge of the funnel to drive qualified leads and understand what the criteria are. Number 3 here is, again, I've hit this repeatedly, right? This is about emphasizing needs and outcome, so it's not about you. This is just, again, a good watchword, and this is good. Think about it in your content, think about it in the calls to action that you have. All those different types of things are super important. My next slide here, number 4. Sometimes it's fun to put presentations together. I really like this image. JC liked it as well, so I feel validated. Yeah, it was my understanding there'd be no math. Get comfortable with a spreadsheet, right? And just look at the conversion rates. There is no one touch to close, or maybe there is in some scenarios. But broadly, let's just say there's going to be stages, there's going to be things, there's going to be investments that you're making to drive certain behaviors, and just know what they all are. It's not all just sort of net new customers, right, and revenue. There's a bunch of things that factor into that, and look at it not only, as I said, sort of stage to stage, but over time. You know, because you get into some times where like, hey, we had, you know, 5% conversion. Okay, is that good? Right? Is that different? Is that higher than it was last month? Is it lower? Is that better quarter over quarter? What did we do? You know, so just, you know, jam yourself that way, I think, is an important way to do it, right? And again, we're not talking calculus here. What we're talking about is, you know, just sort of having a discipline out around that. Number 5, I think, is a rule of life, right? This isn't just sort of, you know, pipeline performance and sales and marketing, right? But follow up, man. And this isn't just, you know, at the individual level. Just think about your process and what you're asking people to do, and what is the interval before they hear from you, right? You don't want to. I mean, again, this is sort of this. You think about social platforms, and I think we've all probably been on the receiving end of this, where somebody that looks interesting that you don't know tries to connect with you on LinkedIn. Okay, you know, I like to use LinkedIn. Please feel everybody come connect with me on LinkedIn. But what I don't want you to do then is 10 minutes later to send me a LinkedIn email and then try to sell me something. Right? That's not following up. You know, following up is understanding that people move through the process and the buying process at different intervals and at different levels, and whether it's an individual sales activity to sort of follow up to move people through, or the discipline to say, well, sales is no longer responsible for follow-up, marketing is, because all a nurture program is essentially follow-up. And so often when I go into companies and work with companies, you know, there's people that have been through the sales process or fallen out at some point in time that nobody ever revisits. They just sort of go into the, you know, the monthly newsletter. And you have to think about the investment that you've made to get people into the funnel and leverage that going forward, right? Number 6 here, I want to leave a little bit of time for questions, so I'm going to try to accelerate a little bit here. Number 6 is around context, right? And again, this is very much highlighted by we were talking about how Cicito sort of takes social data, gives you all this wonderful contextual information, so it's not just name, title, location. The better you are at this, right, the more effective and productive you're going to be. Go back to my LinkedIn example, not in context. Connecting with me is in context, right? You know, trying to sell me something I don't need because you haven't even looked at what I do for a living, right, is not, right? So marketing and sales campaigns that actually use context are extremely valuable and high performing. Number 7 here is around understanding how your customer buys, right? Buyer journey. I know that gets a lot of lip service, but you have to think about it, and you have to think about where people are in the stage and relative to it, understanding that just because somebody doesn't move into a direct sales discussion doesn't mean it's not a good lead, right? Doesn't mean it's not a potential customer. You just have to build your programs and your processes to accommodate getting people to believe in you, and then getting people to basically hand you money to solve their problem, right, in the simplest way. Number 8 is around getting on the same side of the table. I think I referenced this earlier. I'm just a huge fan in this approach, right, which is, you know, if you sit across the table from somebody, it's a much more sort of like, you know, confrontational sort of, I want something from you, I'm telling you something. You know, when you get on the same side of the table and you put something up on the screen, right, and that's where this is where you put your conversion math into play, right, and you look at the various stages, and you look at how things are converting, and you have a conversation around it. You unite as a sales and marketing team around driving pipeline performance, and you look at it holistically, and you don't look at, you know, what I did versus what you did, and there's just a lot of just stuff that can fall out if you do this in a programmatic way. Number 9, because I can't have any presentation that goes without a Glenn Ross snapshot. If you've not seen the movie, it's certainly a classic around sales, right? This is what we're here for, right? This is what we're doing all this stuff. We're trying to get a purchase commitment. You know, so knowing, you know, if you qualify to the right audience with the right message, and let the sales experience, the marketing experience unfold along with the buyer journey. You know, and again, focus on getting the purchase commitment. Make it easier for people to buy, right? Whether that's, you know, giving them a starter package of some kind, right? Whether that's being flexible in terms of contract terms or payment intervals, or things like that. But you know, this is sort of the prize, right? This is what we're trying to get to. This is rarely something people don't already understand, but to me, it's all part of the broader sort of pipeline performance piece. And then number 10, right? Closed won is the end of the beginning. It's not the scope of this presentation, and there's other sort of, customer loyalty, customer experience experts out on the landscape, right? But, if you do all this work and we get someone to become our customer and then they leave in a month, we have a problem, right? We're not targeting the right people. We're not looking at the right markets. Your goal is to work very efficiently to drive people in, to make them become customers and then keep them for a long time. So there's, think about onboarding and think about customer experience and customer support as a sort of an extension of the overall sets of activities here. So last slide on this kind of recaps these things again. I won't go through them, and I know that was kind of a quick acceleration through that. We've covered a lot of ground today. I am certainly interested and available to follow up and talk about any of this stuff. My wrap-up slide is 3 key things, right? What I miss, because this is sort of a collective pool of my experience and clearly through the lens of Cecido and what they're doing. What do I need to clarify? And then important, right? How can I help, right? Happy to help. Just let me know. It doesn't mean I'm going to give you, a consulting proposal. It's I'm happy to have a conversation and see if I can be helpful. So take me up on that. I think we've got a couple of minutes, maybe not too many, for questions if those have come in. And then the final slide here is a wonderful picture of me with my Twitter handle and email address if you want to reach me. So, JC, thank you so much to you and the Cecido team for allowing me to share some perspective here. And like I said, if there's some questions, I'm happy to answer them, or whatever you'd like to do now.
Thank you so much, Robert. That was a lot of great insights. I certainly found that to be very helpful. I'm just, I don't really see any questions here, but I will ask one, right? So having heard of this, right, what is one thing like we as marketers can start doing tomorrow or next week?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's the classic. That's great. What do I actually do now? My suggestion is, if you don't already have this, light up a Google Sheet, because it's easy to collaborate on, or go to Excel. And you probably have systems where this information is, whether you're running Marketo, whether you certainly should have Google Analytics running to sort of see website traffic. But just build a funnel, right? Look at your I'll use as an example. It's kind of much more of a software example, so I don't know the context of everybody's on the phone. But look, if your primary call to action is to get people to your website to start a trial, like Cecido's is, what's the web traffic, right? And then what a percentage of that is new traffic, and then what percentage of that comes from what specific sources, right? Stuff that's referral, stuff that's from social, stuff that's sort of direct and organic, stuff that's coming via paid programs, right? Look at it in terms of percentage of concentration, but then also think about it in terms of engagement stats, and just build this spreadsheet. And then look at conversions, right? Okay, how many leads did I generate? How many marketing qualified leads were generated? How many of those became sales accepted leads? How many of those sales accepted leads became sales qualified leads? How many of those became forecasted opportunities in my world? And then how many converted? And there's a lot of data that goes into that, but it becomes kind of a unified place. And then that's the thing you can sit on the same side of the table and look at, right, with not only the marketing team, but also with the sales leadership. So that's my recommendation.
Well, thank you so much for that recommendation, Robert.
Yeah, you're welcome. This has been fun. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you for attending, everybody. We will be sending you the webinar recording in just a few hours later today. And feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. And you can also check out Cecido for yourself if you like by signing up for a trial on our website. All right. Have a good day, everyone. Bye.